Hello to everyone. My name is NC Lightworker, and I am basically a light worker by trade. A light worker is someone who has received a calling from the Most High God and has been entrusted with the duty to light the pathway for God's people. I do not have any religious affiliation, nor am I affiliated with any group or organization. Also, I do not respond to any questions, comments, or emails because as a light worker, I am only here to present the information. This video is a continuation of the Inside the Matrix series and will mention concepts that were previously covered. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get started. We live in a world of real and imaginary. I am a conscious person, which means that I am awake and I have a heightened sense of awareness. Therefore, I operate according to what is real. Unfortunately, the average person is not awake, they are sleepwalking. They have no real concept of reality because the reality they exist in is based off the imaginary. It's based within the matrix. We live in a world of real and imaginary. What is real is created by God. The imaginary, the matrix, was created by the enemy. We are the gods that walk this earth. The enemy has known our true identity for thousands of years. The enemy is weak and cannot kill you directly. The only way a god can be killed is by self-destruction. Essentially, you have to play an active role in your own demise. We live in a world of real and imaginary. No weapons formed against me shall prosper, because the only weapon that the enemy has is the imaginary. The enemy's weapons are psychological in nature, and its main objective is to convince you that the imaginary is real. This is done by the use of false terminology, imaginary concepts, and through orchestrated events. Symbolism is very important because it conveys a stronger message than actual words. So let's take a final look at the timeline. The 400-year countdown started in the year 1600. The year 2000 was the enemy's final year of freedom under the age of Pisces. They were fully aware that a changing of the guards was now in order. The enemy established a vast empire in America, and they knew that everything they built would eventually come tumbling down. The end was symbolically communicated to the world on September 11th, 2001. My answer to this is no, because a conspiracy theory implies that there is an element of secretiveness. As I mentioned in previous videos, truth is always within plain sight. So let's do a little exercise to see if you can spot the truth. On September 11, 2001, the Twin Towers fell due to an act of quote-unquote terrorism. Osama bin Laden was later named as the prime suspect that same year. Truth is always within plain sight. Within his name, you will find the last names of two important people. I'll give you a hint. The letter B appears once in each name. Pause this video if you need more time. We live in a world of real and imaginary. President Barack Obama was not elected into office until 2009. Is it a coincidence that the last names of both the future president and vice president are found within Osama bin Laden's name? Obama is found backwards, and Biden is spelled forward. Now, a lot of times you will be able to find a phrase, so I'm just going to go ahead and spell out the phrase that you can find. I want to take this time to address the Black Lives Matter movement. There is an invisible hand behind every movement. And as I mentioned in a previous video, the enemy is very desperate, and the Black Lives Matter movement is literally a joke. Now, I gotta give the devil some props on this one because this is pretty darn funny. Here we have a quote-unquote Black civil rights movement that is being spearheaded by a white man who is an agent. Of course, the same thing occurred within the NAACP. These people claim that they identify with being African American. Now, personally, I don't care what you identify yourself as. The real question is, are you or are you not genetically and culturally connected to the very people that you claim you represent? The answer, of course, is no. So let's get back to Sean. Now, I am a black woman with dark skin. Since opposites attract, I mainly attract light-skinned black men. Trust me, I know a light-skinned black man when I see one. Sean is not a light-skinned black man. That is a white dude. We live in a world of real and imaginary. The Black Lives Matter movement and the NAACP are bullshit organizations. Anything that perpetuates the imaginary concept of race, anything that perpetuates the notion of being a downtrodden African American whose people were slaves, woe is me, is part of the imaginary. It is part of the matrix. The enemy does not ever want you to come into knowledge of God's self, to be reminded that you originated from the greatness that is Egypt. The weapons that the enemy uses are psychological in nature. Its main objective is to convince you that the imaginary is real. This is done by using false terminology, imaginary concepts, and through orchestrated events. In order to make the imaginary seem real, the enemy has to do something special to it. They have to breathe life into it by hyping it up. So let's examine the Black Lives Matter movement. As previously discussed in the video titled, Race Does Not Exist, the White Devil's Public Enemy Number 1, the fake news stories of black men being killed by police is an example of the enemy using orchestrated events as a way of lending a false sense of validity to the Black Lives Matter movement. Secondly, the enemy is using association. They are linking the Black Lives Matter movement with a previous movement in an attempt to make the Black Lives Matter movement seem real. However, this is being done on an unconscious level. So let's bring it into your consciousness. Shaun King, take a minute to think about what previous movement his persona is being linked to. Pause this video if you need more time. Truth comes from making connections. Is it a coincidence that his last name is King? Is it a coincidence that he is spearheading a civil rights movement? Is it a coincidence he is a graduate of Morehouse College? Is it a coincidence that he is a clergyman? We live in a world of real and imaginary. It is important to understand the true origins of the architects of the Matrix in America. The Blue Bloods are of quote-unquote English descent and have direct blood ties to the British monarchy. The reason why I say quote-unquote is because their true heritage can be traced back to a different land. Egypt is the birthplace of civilization. The British monarchy and the Blue Bloods in America are nothing more than the descendants of those that were enslaved by our Egyptian ancestors. This is indeed their true heritage. Their castles and golden crowns are merely a sad imitation of what they saw in Egypt. After being led out of Egypt by Moses, as one could imagine, they were still very sour about their prior status. Hence the creation of the master plan, the creation of the matrix because freedom was only going to last for 2,000 years. America was merely the location or the stage where the final phase of the master plan was to be acted out. There was never a separation of America from England. America is literally New England. The enemy perpetrated the illusion of a separation by orchestrating the American Revolutionary War. Blood is thicker than water. All U.S. presidents, with the exception of Donald Trump, are related by blood, and this blood tie to the British monarchy was symbolically communicated every time a president went to formally meet and bow to the Queen of England. Is it a coincidence that America's former national anthem, which is My Country 'Tis of Thee, has the exact same melody as the British national anthem, God Save the Queen? Blood is thicker than water. Is it a coincidence that Mitt Romney and Barack Obama are cousins? Is it a coincidence that Sarah Palin is related to Princess Diana? Is it a coincidence that Tom Hanks and Camille Cosby are related to Abraham Lincoln? By the way, Claire Huxtable's maiden name was Hanks. Is it a coincidence that Jane Fonda and Jamie Lee Curtis have actual royal titles? Everyone in the family is playing a role in the illusion. We live in a world of real and imaginary. You can breathe a sigh of relief in knowing that Donald Trump is not President of the United States of America. Thanks to the age of Aquarius, that position of power no longer exists. The enemy is functioning on illusions only. Donald Trump is not real. Think about it. Real rich people don't act like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a character being portrayed by an actor. Remember, he did have his own TV show after all. His sole purpose is to deceive and cause a mass distraction. Truth is always within plain sight and can be found when you study the definition of words. Trumpery, worthless nonsense, trivial, useless article, junk. Trumpery derives from the medieval French word tromper, which means to deceive. The enemy does not need or want your money. They want your attention. They want you to stay focused on the imaginary. When you are focused on the imaginary, you remain sleepwalking and never come into the realization that you are the one who possesses the real power and control on earth. The beautiful thing about consciousness is that it will never force itself on you. You always have the option of going back to sleep at any time. The choice is yours. If the information in this post was able to wake up a handful of people, then my mission was accomplished. It is now your responsibility to stay awake, prepare, and continue connecting those dots. Please feel free to share this post. God bless and take care.